In 2018, when Elseworlds was announced as the next big Arrowverse crossover, it was also announced that Elseworlds would introduce the character of Batwoman, and she would be played by Ruby Rose. Now, compared to other members of the Bat family, I don't think Batwoman gets nearly enough attention. I mean, if I listen to you now, Batman, Robin, Red Hood, Nightwing, Batgirl, and Red Robin, I feel most of you could likely tell me who they are and what their origins are, and that would be the end of it. Batwoman, I don't think actually has nearly that much recognition, at least not off the page. So when it was announced that Batwoman would be turning up, I got kind of excited, and I even went out and picked up a Batwoman graphic novel, the Rebirth issue, The Many Arms of Death, just to try and get a little bit of what Batwoman was all about. Now, the backlash against Ruby Rose being cast as it was actually so severe that Ruby Rose actually ended up deleting all of her social media. But I actually think she does a great job in this. So, what's the setup for season 1? Well, compared to other members of the Bat family, the thing that makes Batwoman different is one, she is actually related to Bruce Wayne. She's his cousin, Kate Kane, and two, she's a lesbian. Hey, great. I mean, it's not the first LGBTQ character that the Arrowverse has done. I mean, they've had the likes of Mr. Terrific, Dreamer, Pied Piper, and the like. But well, that's another point for them. So, Kate Kane, she used to have a twin sister named Beth Kane. However, when they were children, thanks to a fight between Batman and the Joker, they were involved in a car accident, and that ended up with the car going over a bridge. Now, while Kate was able to climb out of the car before it fell, her mother and Beth were both in the car, and while her mother was killed, Beth seemingly went missing. And they searched for ages trying to find her, but were sadly never able to, until eventually it was seemingly discovered by her father's kind of new wife, played by Elizabeth Anwys, that they managed to find a skull with Beth's DNA on it and naturally assumed the worst. Now, years later, Kate joined the military academy and was actually set to have a decent career, and was set to join her father's kind of security company known as the Crows for Gotham. However, after it was discovered that she was a lesbian and was in a relationship with another one of the recruits of the academy, Sophie Moore, played by Megan Tandy, she was expelled from the academy. It was said that they could both stay there if they signed an agreement saying this relationship never happened. However, while Kate was willing to stand by her ideals, Sophie said that she really needed the job, and also with a slightly homophobic mother, she couldn't really be seen like that. So she signed the agreement, whereas Kate did not. Years later, Kate returns to Gotham, and with her cousin, Batman, being gone for 3 years, and the city in disarray, she has to come back into the fray, and ultimately adopts the persona of Batwoman. And her main enemy throughout the first season is Beth. Beth didn't actually die in the car accident. She was eventually found by a man named August Cartwright and was kept prisoner in his basement. Cartwright being not necessarily a serial killer, but a rather deranged man who was mainly looking to find a way to kind of heal. He has a son named Jonathan Cartwright, who's later on played by Sam Littlefield, who has got some rather bad facial scarring down his side, and when he sees that Beth is actually a good sewer, he wants her to essentially repair Jonathan's face using skin grafts, and it's rather disturbing. Beth eventually returns to Gotham as Alice, or Red Alice, played by Rachel Skarsten, and she wants revenge against Gotham, particularly Kate and her father, for giving up on her, even when she was still alive. And she's demented, but she is enjoying every single scene she's in. And while I admit Ruby Rose does a great job as Batwoman, Red Alice, whenever she's on screen, she just steals it. So, as I said, with the cast list here, you've got Kate Kane, played by Ruby Rose, obviously the cousin to Bruce Wayne. You got Red Alice, played by Rachel Skarsten. You got Kate's ex-girlfriend Sophie, played by Megan Tandy, who does play it very nicely. You got a so you got Kate's new sister named Mary Hamilton, played by Nicole Kang, who is actually shown throughout the series to own and operate essentially a secret underground hospital. Like, and what she's doing might technically be ethically wrong, but you do actually see that she is actually doing some good, which is nice to see. You've got a man who helps Kate out named Luke Fox, who's actually the son of Batman's old ally Lucius Fox, played by Cameron Johnson, who he's a nice ad. You got Kate's father Jacob, played by Doug Ray Scott, who is actually another Doctor Who Arrowverse crossover actor, which is nice to see. And you've also got his new wife, Catherine Hamilton Kane, who faked the DNA results and then she gets killed by Beth later on. And this is a really, really likeable cast. You've also got a few guest actors in there, such as Julia Pennyworth, who I think is... I'm not sure whether she's a niece of Alfred Pennyworth or whether she's his daughter. I'm not entirely sure. But she's played by Christina Wolf, and she later does develop a nice relationship with Sophie, which is nice to see. We've also got Mouse, played by Jonathan Cartwright, and the cast does really well with this. I mean, it does also throw a few curveballs at it. There are some things I thought were going to happen and didn't, and other things that did very well. For example, there's a news announcer throughout the series called Vespa Fairchild, and when I heard her early on, I thought, oh, is this going to be like the Batwoman interpretation of Livewire in Supergirl? Someone who kind of speaks out against Batwoman, who's kind of constantly on her tail about these things. No, actually, Vespa Fairchild is an ardent supporter of Batwoman. I think one of my favourite parts is there's an episode about halfway through where a police officer ends up saving Batwoman from a train accident, and everyone sees it and thinks, oh, cool, they're dating now, something we can ship. And then later on, when she ends up saving him from an explosion, everyone's cheering, kiss, 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 and he goes in to kiss her, and she's like, nope. And everyone's like, why not? Until she eventually does an interview with Cara Danvers for Catco magazine, and she comes out as a lesbian, and Vespa Fairchild's like, okay, Gotham, we need to reboot our gaydar. Batwoman is a lesbian. Not that there's anything wrong with that. That's actually pretty cool. So it threw a few curveballs at me that I wasn't quite expecting. And I will admit, Batwoman was a series that I kind of left by the wayside for a while, especially with Arrow ending earlier this year. I kind of felt... The Arrowverse is very big. I mean, I only got around to watching Black Lightning last year, but... especially with Crest on Infinite Earth, I kind of felt I needed to narrow down to mainly Arrow, The Flash, Supergirl, and Legends of Tomorrow, just so I have a basic view of everything. But Batwoman's first season, I admit, I did actually really enjoy. The only one thing I would say against it, and sadly this wasn't really anything that could really be helped, was I did feel like the ending of season 1 was a bit abrupt. As I said, this kind of had to be done because it was originally planned to have 22 episodes of the season, which was in line with other CW/DC shows. But they had decided to cut it down to 20 because COVID-19 broke out earlier this year, so they had to abandon filming. So I will admit that the ending to season 1 of Batwoman is a little bit sudden. They show the new villain Hush, who I don't think gets nearly enough attention as one of Batman's rogues. We see him adopt the identity of Bruce Wayne, which is played by Warren Christie, and I think that's actually a really good hook for season 2. But aside from that, it all kind of ends rather suddenly. I'm just thinking, yeah, it feels like there's a chapter missing. I mean, does Kate have a falling out with her father because he doesn't trust Batwoman? Does Mary get mad with him because of that? What happens with Alice? Does she end up killed? Or does Kate end up going after Sophie again, similar to what Parker told her? It all just feels a little bit sudden, like, okay, we're ending here. It's like, really? Oh. I know it had to be done, but I did feel like the ending was a bit sudden, but having put it off for the longest time, I actually think Batwoman is a really good show, and I feel it's a worthy part of the Arrowverse. I definitely include it amongst my Arrowverse rankings. I love it. So, Batwoman Season 1. I say check it out if you haven't already. Until then, well, that's it for now. See ya.